Hi, this is Jim, aka the East Coast Hillbilly, and today what I'm doing is trying to share a little bit of what it's like on the east coast of Canada, Nova Scotia. The flora and fauna here is much different than you'll find in, say, mainland Canada or the northern states. You'd think it's the same, but you'll see today it's much different. And I'm going to be doing a video today about the foraging for food. It's not the typical thing that you'd expect, and it's not really survival. It's more of a way just to enjoy yourself when you're in the wilderness, maybe show your friends how to pick up some odds and sods along the way to be able to, you know, be happy in the East Coast, Nova Scotia. Stay tuned.
So tell me, Jim,
yeah,
what is it about being in the woods that excites you the most?
This is home. This is where I grew up. This is just like being in a lazy boy. For some people, this is my lazy boy. I used to trap with my grandfather from, I would say I was probably 4 years old, 5 years old. My dad would take me fishing, my grandfather would take me trapping, my grandmother would take me hunting. She was the hunter. Okay, so what we're looking for now is drinkable water. It's not always easy to find. I know there's a lot of lakes in Nova Scotia, but it's not always clean, fresh water, especially later in the summer. The water gets stagnant, there's not the flow, so you don't want to drink directly out of a still body of water for sure. So what you're looking for here, some of the things you're going to want to see is we have some hardwood here. There's a popple, a couple of spruce and fir tree here. But what we want is that kind of an environment, but you'll see there is a maple. And that usually has some really good fresh drinking water in it. So I'm going to show you how to ascertain if it's going to have water or not and if it's drinkable. So what you want to look for is in a stump like this that's broken off, it has little recesses in the top. So make sure there's no bats or any other wildlife or game in here. So you give it a little tap. Nothing's coming out, so it's safe to kind of put your hand down in there usually to feel around, and I'll show you what you're looking for. Okay, so once you've determined that there's no dangerous wildlife in there, you reach down in to the cavities and you'll feel around, and you'll know when you feel it. It'll feel smooth, and it's usually cool. There, I have one now. So here's what we're getting. You bring it out, and you'll find these little cavities with water in them, which is really nice. And I can just show you maybe how you can tell if it's fresh or not. So what you might hear this. You're listening for a little sound. Did you hear that click? The click means that it's fresh and nobody else has been into that. So this is perfectly drinkable water. Just like you'd get out of your sink at home, it's always fresh, it's always good. Sometimes it might be warm, but if you hear that click, you know it's fresh, perfectly fine drinking water. Something else that you'll see in Nova Scotia that you don't see everywhere else in Canada is along typically old logging roads. Like this logging road hasn't been used in probably, I would say commercially, in probably 20-25 years, but it's still fairly clear. And it's along these edges you'll see the overgrowth is starting to come back in, encroaching on the road itself. And you can find some excellent food along places like this, especially if you have a sweet tooth. So just watch what I'm looking for here. So we have, these are alder branches, alder trees, alder brush, and that's typical along both waterways, and it's also typical along logging roads in Nova Scotia. They have a very distinct leaf, and they never get to be any real size. They always stay to be small brush like that. But behind here, you'll find some actual grass, and that's where you can find some excellent, excellent food. So as I go back in here, it's not deep rooted, so you just pull it out and you'll find, you know, there's nothing there of any real value. I suppose you could eat it if you were desperate, but, you know, you'd have to be pretty desperate to eat that. But underneath, you can sometimes find these little things. I wouldn't call them a tuber. I don't know what you would call it specifically. I just know my grandfather showed me how to do this. But there's a husk. And with this husk, it's edible, but the real good sweet meat is on the inside of this husk. And it's sometimes hard to get to. You can't really pull it from the side, but you'll notice they have serrated edges along the top. And if you go between these serrations and pull frontwards and backwards, that skin, that husk comes off. And this in here is perfectly edible. Excellent food. It tastes kind of nutty. I would describe it as nutty, chocolatey. Maybe a little molasses in there. I mean, that's the flavor anyway. Not everybody's liking, but it's perfectly good. But remember, you've got to get rid of that husk, that outside shell. It's edible, but it is probably not very good for you. It has no real flavor. Maybe even be poisonous in huge doses.
How many years have you been fishing this river in particular?
My father would take me here on his back. It's, I don't know, what would it be, maybe a half-hour walk from our house, half-hour walk back here. He would carry me on his back, we'd fish off this bridge, and we'd walk down this brook, and then he'd carry me up the next brook. Yeah, from just a little tiny boy, like again, 4 or 5 years old at the most. Yeah, and we catch and release, you know, maybe 40 trout, 50 trout some days in the spring. You go up and down this brook now, you'd be, you know, if you got a dozen, that would be a good day. So you're familiar with the alder bushes. I don't know if they grow everywhere, but they're very common in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. Most of the provinces on the east of Ontario have alder bushes, and they're very useful. There's a short period of time in August where you can actually get a high protein diet from alder bushes. When they're in prime season, oh, here's some. You know it's prime because earlier it will be in a solid piece. Like it'll come in like links, if you will. But when it's perfectly ripe, they come in little pieces like that. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's almost like they've been sliced, and they're almost always the same width. That's when you know you're in perfectly ripe pepperoni conditions. So again, thanks for tuning in to the East Coast Hillbilly. If you like what you've seen today, please subscribe. And if you request more, there's lots more out here that we can explore that is really beneficial for your enjoying the wilderness of Nova Scotia. Thanks for tuning in. This is Jim, aka the East Coast Hillbilly.